So hello and welcome along to another edition of Isolation Interviews for Hospital Radio and my YouTube channel. And I'm super excited to be joined by a very talented actress in the form of Jenna Russell. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Lovely to be here.
Now, obviously, the last year has been tough for many of us. I mean, how has it affected you this last year with everything that's just been going on?
Oh, do you know what? I've got my health, so I'm happy with that. And we've been unaffected as a family by any issues of COVID in terms of being ill, which I'm eternally grateful for. I know some people haven't been as lucky, which is horrendous, but we've been sticking to the rules like mad people. And I guess the biggest impact it's had on me is my family. We're both actors, my other half and myself. And so our work has completely gone. And sadly, we both fall through the gaps in terms of getting any help from the government financially. So that's been really difficult. And my little girl, who is 11, actually just turned 12 2 days ago, hasn't been at school. So that's been trying for her. And she's just gone into secondary school, a new school. I think she had 3 weeks there where she actually saw people. But she's been an inspiration and got on with it and been fabulous. So I'm trying to take a leaf out of her book.
I mean, how have you found the whole homeschooling and all of that? Because I've spoken to a few people who just said that they completely hats off to teachers, to anyone who does it as a full-time job, because it is so tricky.
Well, it's trying to keep them going, isn't it? I don't know whether it's an age group thing, but Betsy's 11, so she's quite au fait with the computer sides of things, and she kind of wants me to leave her to it, which I do. She's always got like a FaceTime call going on with two of her pals, and they work together, and sometimes I stand outside the door and listen to see that they're not just having a great time, and they are actually doing work, but they are being social as well, which I think is good. I know it must be so hard for little ones and ones that are coming up to big exams. You know, I feel for them, but I guess I really feel for the teachers, because they're just delivering classes to a screen and they can't even see the pupils because they have to have their sound off and they have to have their cameras off. So it must be so hard to, such a face-to-face thing, isn't it, teaching? And I really feel for teachers, on so many fronts, but we've been all right. Betsy, my little girl, seems to have coped with it fine. She went in today to have her COVID test to see if she's all right to go back on Monday, which I'm sure she is, because we haven't been out. So it's all been good. But I'm sure if she was 5, it would be a completely different story.
Because that's the other thing as well, is that when you've got young children, you also want to make sure that their mental health is looked after, because this is a time when they're disconnected from their friends in the kind of the usual way. Obviously, they're unable to for children, obviously being in school is such a huge part of their growing up, because, I mean, we all look back at our childhood and think school days, we interacted with our friends, we did this, we did that, and they're kind of losing a bit of that. So you have to make sure that they're being looked after as well.
Yeah, well, we talk a lot, we've always been a very talk about your feelings type of family. So I think she's all right on that front. And I guess she's of an age where she likes school. And I think the fact that she's been taken away from it, when she goes back, she'll love it. She's a little bit trepidatious, but not badly. But I always remember when I was a teenager, I mean, Betsy's not a teenager yet, but that dread after the school holidays of going back to school, if you had the right pencil case, if you'd had a haircut, if everyone was going to laugh at you, all those sorts of things. And that shyness that you get from, walking back into school. I think I'm lucky. I think the age that Betsy is, she'll be all right with that. But I'm sure if she was 15, it would be a different kettle of fish. But, the schools are being so brilliant at looking after everyone and trying their best. We only had a survey through the other day from the school asking how people's mental health, how our daughter's mental health was, how she was feeling. And they're on it. They're on it. It's amazing, and thank goodness for technology that we've been able to at least carry on in some fashion.
And it shows as well that as a nation, we have, in the face of danger, we've completely changed our outlook on how we do things. I mean, 5 years ago, none of this would have really been even in our minds, to the thought of connecting with people online and not actually having that face-to-face contact. So the fact they've been able to sort of get this all together over the past year and get it working to obviously the best of their ability is just amazing.
Yes, extraordinary. And the BBC bite-size thing as well. Don't know whether you've seen any of those, but my little girl showed me some of those the other day, and it's fantastic. It's fantastic. People have been very innovative, and it's all there if you look for it, or if someone shows you it, points you in the right direction. It's there, and thank goodness for that. Thank goodness.
Now, outside of homeschooling, have you found yourself taking up any other hobbies? I mean, I know a lot of people have been baking or gardening when we could. I mean, what have you found yourself doing? Any new hobbies?
Well, I feel like some strange Victorian lady. I've always done a little bit of what do they call it? Like embroidery, but a lot of actors do that on set. Well, not tons, but it's a nice way to just keep your brain ticking over. And I've always intermittently done it, but in the lockdown I've kind of gone mad. It's turned out to be something that I find really calming, and I worked from a kit to start off with, and now I'm doing my own designs. They're quite sweary, Matthew. They're quite sweary, but I've enjoyed that. I like the kitschness of like a beautiful sampler piece that looks like it's something that would be done for someone's wedding in the 1840s, but there's a few swear words thrown in there. That tickles me. But I'm loving all the different stitches that I'm learning, and I'm going to miss doing that. I'll show you one that I'm working on at the moment. I'm trying to do one on invisible fabric.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. So basically,
So
it's like a bee.
Yeah, that's my bee, like a flower. So I've got more details to do, and I've got all the greenery to do. And I'm trying to think what little subversive message I'm going to put in there in the writing. But no, I've really enjoyed those sorts of things. I haven't been baking. I'm a terrible, terrible cook. I've done a little bit of baking, but not much at all. I've mostly been eating chocolate and watching Netflix, if I'm honest.
Sounds good to me. Now, obviously, as an actor, the thing you love doing is getting out there, telling stories, being on the stage. So it must be so difficult that you can't do that. And obviously, so many theatres have obviously had to close. We're unsure. We're hoping that soon they'll get to reopen. But for you, some of them have even closed permanently, which is obviously horrible news. So for you as an actor, you must be absolutely gagging to get back out there on the stage.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's so much part of our identity, isn't it? And who would have ever thought that you would not be able to sing? Who would have ever thought that it's been, something that we've done since time began is tell each other stories over a fire. It's such a noble art form, and the fact that it's not allowed is upsetting, I guess. I mean, we will get back eventually, and it's going to be it'll be an interesting landscape. I don't know what it'll look like. I'm one of those actors that hasn't really stepped much into the commercial world. And I can't work out whether it's going to be better for commercial theatre or for smaller scale things, the kind of things that I normally do. But, whichever one comes back, I wish them luck, and I hope it happens. People don't realise, do they? That's the sad thing. The last school that Betsy was at, they said, "Oh, but the theatres will open again and your show will happen." And you go, no, not necessarily. If it was a show like Les Mis, very probably, or a show that had opened and was a big West Endy show. But a lot of the plays that were on at the Almeida, for example, I had Daniel Evans, who's an actor I've worked with a lot and who runs Chichester Festival Theatre now. Daniel and I put together a show for the Donmar Warehouse, and we were going to put that on, and that's gone. I don't know whether that's going to get picked up. Then I was meant to do Piaf, playing Piaf up at Nottingham for them, and going to Leeds. I think that will happen, but when? We've already delayed it a year. And then I was meant to do Hello Dolly with Imelda Staunton. And of course, we find these things out. I was told 2022, and I found out on Twitter last night, somebody's found out, that apparently it's 2023. So we're always the last to know. And even if the theatre's opened tomorrow, producers need a lead up time. They've got to find a theatre, they've got to employ the staff, they've got to employ someone to design a set, get a set built, then think about casting, which, you know, I'm sure people who don't know how the business works, to cast a play usually takes 2 or 3 months. To cast a big musical can take up to 6 months to find and source the people and hope that they're available. And sometimes shows change their dates because the lead actor they want isn't available. The jigsaw puzzle of getting a show up is so complicated. So who knows? I mean, at the moment, I've got nothing, and you know, I was doing rather well. I've been an actor since I was 14, and it's my living. You know, it's something I love to do. Of course, I do. I adore my job, which is even sadder because I do love doing it. But it is also how I feed my family, and we've been living off savings. It's you know, we're not going to last much longer, so I don't know what's going to happen then. We shall see.
I mean, I think that's the one thing, obviously, to come from this pandemic is that a lot of people have come to realise that they miss that going out and seeing a show, that because it's not just seeing a show. You make a night of it, you go out, you maybe have a meal, you know, you make an evening of it, and it becomes a lovely event. And I'm hopeful that once it is back up and running, it will be bigger and better than ever, because people will have missed it for a year and will be desperate to go out and do it again. And hopefully people will go, they will flock to the theatres in their masses.
Oh, I hope so. It's funny, I went for an audition in the summer into London, and I live outside of London. And I parked at Jerwood Space, which is a beautiful rehearsal room in central London on the sort of south side. And I walked through London, and honestly, I cried because, you know, the road that the young Vic is on and the old Vic is on, can't remember, the Upper Ground or something. It's not Upper Ground, it's my daughter, forgive me. But it's usually bustling and it's heaving with really interesting people, little independent shops. They were all shut, all the cafes, little coffee bars shut. And you realise the infrastructure around these two great theatres and how everyone who goes to the old Vic or the young Vic will go to local restaurants, and they're all gone, and all those jobs. You know, I watch MasterChef, and they're going, yeah, I'm looking forward to opening my pop-up restaurant, you know, from 2 seasons ago or something. And a little part of me dies because I think there's all these entrepreneurial, wonderful people expressing themselves through food, and how many restaurants will have gone under? So many of those lovely little places that have gone, and pubs. Like you say, going to the theatre or going to the cinema, you meet up with a pal or you go on your own. I love going to the theatre on my own. It's one of my great pleasures to sit in a theatre on my own, go for a little meal by myself. I really enjoy it. And I always say to people, you don't need, you know, to go with 10 people to anywhere. Art galleries on your own are extraordinary because you don't have anyone giving you their opinion, so you can just sit and soak it all up. But I feel sad for all the industries that rely on theatres. It's very sad, and I just don't think people realise what a big industry it is and how far-reaching it is. You know, the theatre in education, all those things that teach our young people how to communicate with each other, how to work together. they've all gone. That's the first thing that's going to go, is all these things. And also young actors coming up. For years we've been trying so hard to get working class actors in, and people of different ethnicities into the business to make it accessible. And again, we're taking like 20 steps back, because so many people have I know so many young actors that have moved back home to their parents, and seriously, some of them have given up acting, and they were doing well. They were doing really well, and it's knocked them very hard. I'm lucky. I've been doing it since I was 14. I have that resilience, and a lot of us that have been doing it a while have that resilience, and maybe have a little bit of savings to tide them over. But there's going to be a massive gap, and it's going to take a long time to pull that back.
Now, you have had, as you say, a varied career, or appearing in many different shows. But for you, is there a show that you were a part of that you were maybe more proud of, or one that just sticks in your heart as a fond favourite?
I'm sure I'm a huge fan of Stephen Sondheim, and I've been really lucky to have worked with him on a lot of his shows. So I always enjoy doing his work. I particular favourites, I think Sunday in the Park, because it was one of my favourite shows ever, and I got to do it in London and in New York, which was a childhood dream come true. And it was a beautiful production, and a show that Dan and I, Daniel Evans, who played George, we used to look at each other across the stage before the show, and sometimes if we were feeling tired, like you do on an 8-show week, we'd just yell over and say, tonight there's someone, this is really going to change their life, because it was one of them shows. And that always felt brilliant. I did a show called Mr. Burns at the Almeida, which wasn't a musical, which was a play by a brilliant American writer called Anne Washburn, and directed by Robert Icke, who is an absolute genius of the theatre. That was really wonderful, and brought me a lot of joy, and it was an extraordinary show. It's a show that actually would work, a play that would work very well now, because it's post-apocalyptic, and it's about how we tell stories and the history of storytelling, and how this is group of, anyway, I won't go into it. It's an extraordinary play, a very odd but brilliant play. And what else? I did Grey Gardens, which I loved, with Sheila Hancock. We did that. I was very proud of that. Very honoured to be part of that show. Hopefully we'll do that again. That's a fingers crossed thing. So many, Matthew, I've done so many shows that I love. I mean, I think I can count 2 jobs maybe since I was 14 that I've not liked. It's a great profession to be part of. I was trying to explain this to my little girl. You do a job, and sometimes your best friend on the job is a 15-year-old girl, and on another job it might be someone who's in their 80s or 90s, and from different backgrounds, different classes, and we all work together. And I always love a rehearsal period, because you get to share life experiences, and you broaden your horizons and do a play about a certain period in time, and you suddenly learn all about that period of time. So it becomes like a great history lesson. There's so much to be taken out of it. There isn't just the obvious thing of standing up in front of an audience and getting applause, which again, I think a lot of people think that's why we do it. We don't. That's nice, but it's not why we do it. It's not why we do it.
I mean, one of the plays, unfortunately, I never got to see it, but that you did at the Hampstead Theatre. And I remember one of my guests I had on the show last year was the lovely Tamsin Outhwaite. You obviously got to work with Tamsin on the show, and I can't remember the title, which is so frustrating.
Die Viv and Rose.
That's the one. So what was that like to do?
Hampstead, though. I didn't do that at Hampstead. I did that in the West End. They did it twice at Hampstead. They did it once in a really small space. Then I think they did it in the main house with a different cast. Tam is the only person that's been in all all versions of it. And then we did it at the vaudeville, and it was me, Tamsin, and Samantha Spiro. Oh, it was great. We had a great time. But I've known Tam for years. I've known Sam for years. And it's funny, we were only speaking yesterday. She's enjoying homeschooling. But and then we worked together again briefly on EastEnders recently. Oh, she's great. And it's a brilliant play about 3 women, and you follow them from when they're at university to throughout their lives. You keep picking up moments of their lives. Really beautiful play.
And we must obviously talk about EastEnders, because that was, it was interesting to see you take on a role that obviously so many people had already known Michelle from back when Susan Tully, I believe it was, played it back in the 80s. So to take on a role that people already knew the character a bit, was that daunting, or what was that like?
Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible. My friend, right, years ago, they did a remake with Shane Ritchie, and I was a regular on it and kind of his love interest, of Minder. And we did that when I came back from New York, and I was very pregnant, and it was a remake of Minder. So I was they used to have a pub in Minder where everyone used to go, and I was the daughter of the guy who owned the pub, so I had my own pub. And I think Shane, who was playing, anyway, it was all confusing, but we did that show. And the executive producer on that, out of the blue, rang me via my agent, said, can we have a chat? And we spoke, and he said, would you be at all interested in coming in to be in EastEnders? And I was on holiday in France with lovely Anthony Drew. Do you know Anthony? Have you worked with Anthony? So I was like, oh, and he said, oh, I love EastEnders. And I went, I haven't watched it for years. I used to watch it long time ago, when Sue Tully was in it. And they said it would be minimal, a year's contract. And I never do long contracts. I've always had an aversion to them. But over this holiday, I thought, you know what? That would probably be quite nice at this point in my life. I could see myself doing that. So I said to them, yeah, I'm interested. What part is it? What's the part? And they said, we can't tell you. We'll take you out to dinner. So they took me out to dinner, the casting director and this executive producer. And we were chatting about all sorts of things. And I'd just done a play with Jamie Lloyd, so I had no hair. I shaved my head for Dr. Faustus. And I said to them, you must know I've got no hair. I don't look great at the moment. It's not what I usually look like. They went, it doesn't matter, we don't care about your hair. So I went and met them, and we were chatting about this, that, and the other. And then he went, okay, so it's Christmas Eve, and Sharon's had a really hard time, and she goes out to the bins, and Phil's just about to get his liver transplant, and she's by the bins, and the one person she needs is her best friend, and she turns around, and who's there? And I went, who? And they went, Michelle. I went, oh, is she coming back? And he went, no, you're Michelle. I went, oh, I'm all right. And then I went, oh no, don't think I'm being ungrateful. I said, oh, that's a tough one. So I came home and I spoke with Ray about it, and we both agreed it was a really tough one, because Sue Tully is just brilliant actor. I mean, she doesn't act anymore. She now directs, and she's one of our greatest television directors, works in America all the time, does amazing things. And actually, when I used to watch EastEnders, I used to sing the theme tune and sing along to the theme tune, but me and my best mate Jax used to sing this. Susan Tully is so great. Susan Tully's great. She's fantastic. That's what we used to sing when we watched it, because we loved her so much. So I was really torn, but I thought, you know what? It's a year of my life. It might be all right. And they kept saying, well, we do it all the time. People initially can't bear it, but they get used to it. I don't think people ever got really got used to it. And I kind of didn't get used to it. Yeah, it's a great job, but it's a very odd job. You have no creative input whatsoever, and I'm used to that. I think if I wasn't used to that, I wouldn't know it. And it was gorgeous for a lot of reasons. Tisha Dean, who plays Sharon, is one of my oldest friends. I've known her since I was 14, and we did so much stuff together, and she is the most hilarious, gorgeous woman, such heart, and she's heaven. So me and Tish being together for a year and a half, nearly 2 years that I was in it in the end, was wonderful. And I mean, I don't know whether you know, Matthew, but because I've talked about it, but years ago when they initially did EastEnders, I was asked to be in it. I auditioned for it, and I got offered, in the first cast, I got offered Mary, the punk unmarried mother, and Tish was offered it, and a few, like Adam Woodyard, who I knew as well. We were all offered it, but I was doing a TV job in Wales. And I always remember we had this wonderful lighting cameraman called Colin Munn. And he said to me, "You're all right." I said, "I just feel funny." And he went, "Why?" And I said, "Because I've been offered a job and I've said yes to it, but it's 16 months. And I was like 17 or something. And I just don't know whether I want to do it." And he said, "Have you said yes?" I said, "Well, yeah," because I had quite a lot of pressure from my family. "Oh, that sounds good." And he said, "If you don't want to do it, just don't do it." So I pulled out. And at the time, it was the right thing for me to do. But it's always been unfinished business. So that was another reason I did it, because I thought, you know what? I'm going to do it because I was meant to have been in it all those years ago and I wasn't. So I'm going to do it. And I'm glad I did it. And thank goodness I did it, because it's the savings from that that's managed to get me through this pandemic that we're going through. But it was great fun, but not... not kind of how I'm used to working. I guess it's a very different vibe.
It's funny how life sort of works itself out in the end. Obviously, sort of being able to kind of go back to something that was there at the beginning. So, I mean, and especially like we say, going to play a character that had already kind of been established. I mean,
Brilliantly established.
Brilliant, exactly.
Brilliantly.
And I imagine as well, there's that whole thing of, do I follow Susan's direction? Do I try and make it the same character, or do I take it off and make the character my own? Because
we had those conversations, and because I said, do you want me to kind of emulate her? And he went, no, just do you. Just do what you would. Just you respond to the material how you like. And so I did. I thought there's no point, and there's going to be a few generations of people who watch it who don't remember Michelle. But I think they gave me a really difficult storyline. My initial storyline was kind of hardcore, and as I kept saying, if you want the audience to love her, you've got to make her lovable on some level. But they had this idea that they really wanted to do. We tried. We were getting there, and then the producers changed. So when the producer changes, everything kind of changes. And I felt like, I'm used to, when I'm working, I'm used to doing 8 shows a week, or I've done quite a lot of telly. I'm used to a certain way of working. And in EastEnders, it's really strange because you're employed for the year. And when you've got a storyline, it's crazy busy. I remember the first Christmas I was there, I had 25 scripts in my bag to learn. And one of them was a 2-hander. I mean, it was mad. But then once your storyline's finished, you can sometimes not work for weeks and weeks, or come in for one day to be in the pub when there's something going on because it's someone else's storyline. So it's feast or famine. And the famine-y bit I found really difficult, because I just thought, I'm not a kid. I was maybe 50 maybe. And I thought, as an actress, I don't have years to enjoy my time as an actor on this planet. And the sitting at home doing nothing, even though I was being paid for it, just felt wrong. and I would just be going, oh, what do I do? And you couldn't go away because they might ring you up if someone got ill. They would maybe go, oh, we'll rewrite it and that character can do it. So you were always on call. But sometimes it would be 6-7 weeks where you weren't in work, and I just didn't sit right with me. It didn't.
I mean, another project that I just wanted to briefly talk about, which, I mean, for me would have been like a dream. It was working on Doctor Who, because you got to appear in the series when it came back in 2005, alongside, Christopher Eccleston, Billy Piper. So what was that like to be part of a show which has got a massive history? What was it like being a part of that?
Oh, it was lovely. Lovely Phil Collinson was the producer, and Phil is a brilliant producer. He does... recently he's just done It's a Sin and Gentleman Jack, but I worked with him years ago on Peak Practice, and then after that I did Born and Bred for 4 years for him on the BBC, which was a lovely Sunday night drama with Michael French and Maggie Steed, loads of wonderful, Clive Swift. It was a gorgeous job. So Phil and I knew each other very well, and I was just about to do Guys and Dolls, and I had a little space, and he rang up and went, listen, it's a long shot. He said, it's not an enormous part, but it'll be fun. He said, I'm doing this new series of Doctor Who, we're rebooting it, and there's this fun part if you want to do it. So I did. But he was so sweet. He was like a kid in a toy shop. When I turned up, he went, do you want to go in the, what's it called?
The TARDIS.
The TARDIS. And I was like, yeah, all right. Because I wasn't a huge Doctor Who fan. It didn't, and of course it became something quite different when he produced the new series. But I was in the TARDIS going, yes, nice. I got killed by a Dalek, which made me laugh. And that was lovely. Nice to be part of. It's one of those things, every now and then my daughter pricks up her ears about something, and she got into Doctor Who when Jodie Whittaker, forgive me, yeah. Jodie Whittaker took over, because she liked the idea of it being a girl. And I just said, I was in this. Were you? So every now and then I get her. She normally doesn't care that I'm an actor, but every now and then something will pop up. She goes, oh. Or if I know one of the cast members of Six, she's a bit like, oh. So I got a couple of brownie points for being in Doctor Who.
Now, I just want to say it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you. But before we go, is there any messages you'd like to give to anyone that is in hospital at the moment, or to the amazing NHS that we have out there that are working so hard? Well,
firstly, thank you, NHS. I mean, my goodness, if I could throw my arms around you all, I would, and look you in the eye and say thank you. I can't even imagine how difficult it's been and how difficult it's going to be when you're having to deal with the backlog of things that once this has calmed down, please God. But honestly, myself and my family are so grateful, and thank you. And to the lovely people who are in hospital, I hope you're feeling better. I hope you get better, and I hope you'll be home soon and in the arms of your families. It's so hard being in hospital at any time. It always feels slightly isolating, but I can't imagine how isolating it must feel at this time. But just know that we're all thinking of you and sending you love from the outside world. And actually, we're not doing much more than you are. We're just a bit healthier, I guess. But speedy recoveries and lots of love.
I just want to say, Jenna, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving up your time. Of course, keep safe. And thank you again for your time.
My pleasure. And hopefully see you on the other side, sweetheart.